When are we leaving for the surface? We'll leave as soon as we meet up with Kelrim, Darren says. He's probably in the quarantine zone already, so I'll go get him as soon as we reach the waiting room. Are Luna and Araka with us too, or do we need to wake them up, I say. I haven't heard a word from either of them this morning. Oh. Wait, Luna? Well, we don't know which one is active at the moment, but whatever. Araka with us too, okay. Yeah, I'm awake, Araka says. What about Luna? I ask. Luna is awake, but I don't think she'll answer you, Flower says. I've been trying to talk to her since I woke up, but she keeps telling me that she's trying to learn a new spell that she'll only speak to me when it's done. A new spell, I say. Maybe it's something that can help us against the royal guards. Alright, leave her to it. Then we walk down the corridors a bit more until we reach the waiting room. The commotion from 9 hours ago seems to have died down a little, but I'm not sure if this is because they are done with the evacuation or because the rebels no longer have enough space in their base to offer shelter to all the refugees. Judging by all the civilians who are still in the waiting room, my guess would be that they really did run out of space where they could send people to sleep. Albert seems to have been waiting for us to arrive, because as soon as he saw us walking out of the corridor, he immediately rushed in our direction. He is now standing in front of us, both looking tired and irritable. He must have been busy guiding to refugees all night without getting any time to sleep. The King of Underground has requested a meeting with you, Albert says, trying to act politely, although you can clearly tell from his tone of voice that he is forcing himself to talk like this. He is waiting for you in the throne room. Follow me. Albert, you forgot to put on your fake smile when you asked us to come with you. Your king can wait. First, we need to find Kelrim. Who the fuck is Kelrim? Kelrim? Is that her father? What is her name again? The mute girl is her father? Whatever. Sure thing. Let's go. Your king can wait sounds a little bit weird. So yeah, let's go. Albert nods, then he begins to walk towards the throne room as the rest of us move to follow him. After walking for a while, we finally reach the room where the king was waiting for us. We seat ourselves on the empty chairs that are facing the throne as we are taking our seats. Albert walks past us and he goes to join Peter, who's currently standing behind the king's throne. It seems that the two guards that are usually by the king's side have not been invited this time around. The only people here except for our group are the King of Underground, Albert and Peter. Oh, this is not R. This is a typo. The only people here except for our group and the King of Underground are Albert and Peter, I'm guessing. Oh no, Albert is the King of the Underground and Peter is the subordinate. That's why they're. All three of them seem very tired and the king even has visible bags under his eyes. However, aside from the fatigue, I can also feel a certain tension in the air that I haven't felt in the last two meetings. Hopefully just my imagination. Good morning, friends, the king says. I hope you have all slept well. My apologies for calling you here yet another meeting. Out of the blue, but there are quite a few things I need to discuss with you that can't be delayed any longer. First, allow me to give you a bit of context. He then takes a small metal cube out of his pocket, just like the one that he used in our first meeting with him, and he holds it front for us. My friend Aiden went out of his way to lure some people into one of the few rooms on the palace in which we had recording devices, the king says. I am assuming that he did this because he wanted you to listen to his conversation, so I will respect his wishes. The discussion that you are about to hear happened yesterday, shortly after the majority of you were mistakenly teleported to the trap-filled cavern below the city. I believe that you should be able to easily recognize most of, if not all, the participants in this conversation. Let us begin. He then presses one of the buttons from the metal cube device and he begins to hear a voice coming out of it, just like the last time. As soon as I recognize the first voice, I immediately understand what this conversation is going to be about. Is this the room that you wanted to bring us to? Ambassador Olander says. Yes, Aiden says. In here, we should be safe from spies that might be trying to listen to our conversation. I assure you, Palace, that there are no spies in this palace, the King of Olander says. There would be no way for them to get past our guards. I do not doubt your great guard's competence, King, Aiden says, but still, it is better to be safe than sorry. What is it that you wanted to speak to us about, Master? The captain of the Royal Guard says. I do not know where to begin, the ambassador says. Just so hard for me to put this into words. My king, it is with a heavy heart that I've come to bring you the news that your brother, a beloved Earl, has been murdered in Thelius. The king does not answer the ambassador. It's funny that the king's brother was just going around alone with a slave girl. I guess he just had just that much confidence that no one would attack him. The king does not answer the ambassador in any way, neither do any of the others. After more than 5 seconds of silence, the ambassador speaks again. My king, the ambassador says in a slightly uneasy voice. Ambassador, I want you to think very carefully about your next few words. The king of Arundar says in a frighteningly calm tone. What you're about to say from now on may well decide whether you live or die. First of all, I want you to confirm to me one more time about what you just told me. Are you absolutely certain that my brother is dead? Yes, your highness, the master says in a trembling voice. I am certain of it. We have brought home his lifeless body as proof. Our mages did all they could to preserve the body with their spells, but it has been more than a week since his death, so you should be warned that the sight of him will be a bit shocking. How did this happen? The king asked with the same calm voice. He was attacked in the middle of the street by some tournament participants. Ambassador says, the Earl, I fought valiantly for his life, but the mages used cowardly tactics to... What? The Earl fought valiantly for his life? No, he did not. He just immediately died, but whatever. But the mages used cowardly tactics to... Some tournament participants did this. The king says, how is that possible? Why haven't they been sent back to their own continent by the spell that prevents them from hurting the people of Varathia? Yes, I'm interested to know this as well, Aiden says. That's funny. Tell us, Master, how were those villainous mages able to bypass such a reliable and non-exploitable protection spell? Even though I can't see them talking, I can easily imagine the smirk the Aiden must have on his face at this point in the conversation, as he's looking at the ambassador with his eyes closed, waiting for an answer. Aren't you going to answer them, ambassador? The captain of the royal guards says after a long pause. We don't know how those mages were able to bypass the protection spell. The master says, however, we have reason to believe that they are capable of harming any of the locals without any restrictions. And these tournament participants, they were executed for their crimes? The king asked, still in a calm tone, but you can tell that he is barely restraining himself at this point. No, your highness, the master says. The gnome king was very opposed to the idea of executing them. Eventually we reach a compromise and sentence them to fight in one of the greatest arena events in our entire continent's history, but even without their magic, they were somehow able to survive until the end. So according to the laws written in the treaty between all the kingdoms of Varathia, they were released on the same day that you let them go. The king of Arundar shouts so loudly that I almost had to cover my ears. Miserable worm, are you telling me that my brother's murderers are roaming around freely to Varathia at this very moment? I ought to chain you up and feed you to dogs for your incompetence. Your pathetic excuse for a diplomat. Is this why I sent you to Thelius, to negotiate with that idiot gnome as if he and I were equals? Why didn't you tell him that there would be war if he didn't execute those mages on the spot? You just let him walk all over you as if you were one of his lowly servants. My king, I did try to tell him that there would be war, but he wouldn't listen, the master says in a panicky tone. And besides, Golemik was not the only one who took the side of the mages. In fact, the main reason why they were sent to the arena was because the master stopped speaking suddenly, probably because he realized what would likely happen to him if he were to rat on Aiden, in front of the king. Because ambassador says again in a more trembling voice, I can probably imagine what the ambassador was thinking in these moments. Would it be better to be killed by the king or by Aiden? Which one of them would be more likely to spare his life? Was mercy even something that either of these two would be capable of? If I may interject, your highness, the captain of the royal guard says when he realized that the ambassador isn't planning to finish his sentence, that intruders that I told you about earlier were also tournament participants, and they were more than capable of attacking me despite being citizens of Olander. The group that we fought had a fully armored dark-skinned mage with X-shaped scar on his forehead, a banshee that could use ice as an elemental magic, a little girl that could cast fire, and a giant that was shapeshifted as a dwarf. Do any of these descriptions sound familiar to you, Ambassador? That's them, the ambassador shouts. They are the ones who killed the Earl, I'm sure of it. So my brother's killers were on my doorstep this whole time, the king of Olander says, this time controlling the anger in his voice. Captain, you told me that your men were almost able to apprehend some of these intruders before they teleported away at the last minute. You think they are still inside the city? Most definitely, your highness, the captain says. Billy Bob assured us that the invisible barrier he created around the city prevents anyone from teleporting past our walls using any conventional spells. The only way to get in and out of the city is through the city gates. Wherever these criminals are hiding, it must be inside the city.